It was a Saturday afternoon in the summer of 1927. The place was Shibe Park, Philadelphia. There were 35,000 excited baseball fans in the stands, all booing one man. Bob Grove, who was probably one of the greatest left-handed pitchers of all time, had just struck Babe Ruth out on 3 pitched balls for the second consecutive time, and 2 runners were left stranded on base. As the great slugger returned to the bench amidst the wild and abusive jeering, he looked up into the stands with an unruffled smile, just as he had the first time he struck out, gave his cap a polite little tip, stepped down into the dugout, and calmly took his drink of water. In the 8th inning, his turn came up again. This time the situation was critical. The Athletics were leading the Yankees 3-1. The bases were loaded, and there were 2 out. It was up to the great Babe Ruth to win the game or lose it. As he selected his favorite bat and started toward the plate, the crowd rose in a body as if by signal. The excitement was tremendous. The crowd wanted Babe Ruth to strike out again. Lefty Grove rifled the first blazing fastball over the plate. Ruth swung and missed. The next pitch was good, and Ruth swung so hard and missed that he staggered and went down. There was a cloud of dust as the big guy sprawled on the ground. The crowd was going mad. The Babe got to his feet, brushed the dust off his trousers, and got set for the next pitch. Grove delivered the fastball. So fast, few of the fans even saw it. Babe swung again, but this time there was a crack like a rifle shot. The ball soared high and far. It cleared the scoreboard and the houses across the street, one of the longest hits ever made in baseball history. As Babe Ruth trotted around the bases and across the plate behind the other runners with what proved to be the winning run, he received a wild ovation from the crowd, the same crowd that had been booing him all afternoon. Babe looked up into the stands, doffed his cap with that same little smile and the same expression on his face, exactly like the one he wore on his first 2 trips when he had taken the razzing. Now, later in the season, after the Yankees clinched the pennant, Grandpa Rice interviewed Ruth. Babe, he asked, "What do you do when you get in a batting slump?" And Babe answered, "I just keep going up there and keep swinging at 'em. I know the old law of averages will hold good for me, the same as it does for anybody else, if I keep having my healthy swings. If I strike out 2 or 3 times in a game or fail to get a hit for a week, why should I worry? Let the pitchers worry. They're the guys who are going to suffer later on." Babe Ruth's unshakable faith in making the law of averages work for him enabled him to accept his bad breaks and failures with a smile. Now, this simple, common-sense philosophy had much to do with making him baseball's greatest showman, biggest box-office attraction, and the highest-paid ball player of all time. He had his faults like the rest of us, but his faith in the law of averages made him great. Now, there's a lesson there for all of us. Babe Ruth hit 851 home runs, as we all know. He struck out 1,330 times. But we don't think about his failures, and neither did he. He kept swinging and knew that the law of averages would take care of the rest. Well, how about you? I think that's another important principle that we might keep in mind. How the law of averages will work for us if we'll stay in there and if we'll keep swinging. We know that one of the most valuable attributes an adult can have is persistence. And a DePaul University psychologist, Dr. Glenn D. Jensen, has found that the best way to develop persistence in a child is to permit him to fail regularly. When we see a young child trying to do something and finding it difficult, and realizing how simply we can help him finish what he's trying to do, we have an almost overwhelming impulse to give him a hand. If we do this too often, it can be a mistake. In the tests conducted by Dr. Jensen, youngsters aged 3 to 9 years were tested in a room equipped with levers and knobs. They learn after a few minutes that twisting one of them will produce marbles, which will be exchanged for pennies. Now, some of the children are purposely spoiled, get marbles every time they twist the knobs. Others get marbles only after a number of knob twists. Then Jensen cuts off the marbles entirely and begins measuring the children's persistence. Now, white rats also are used in the experiments. The psychologist divides the white rats into 2 groups, those to be spoiled with kindness and those to be disappointed. Now, those to be spoiled are placed in a small cell with a single bar, which, when pressed, produces a tiny pellet of food. The second group finds it harder to come by. The first time they press the bar, it produces, but the next pellet comes only after 5 presses. Then this is raised by geometric progression to 10, 20, 40, 80, and 160. The graphs show that the spoiled rats lose heart quickly when they discover that they will not get food each time. But the frequently disappointed rats keep at it. It seems that the reaction of the children is just about the same as that of the rats, which all goes to prove, what you probably knew already, that a life full of rewards is less a spur to sticking with the job than if it's interlaced with disappointment. When asked if young humans act like laboratory animals in these tests, the university said the answer seems to be yes. So it would appear then that the wise mother or father is not the one who says, "Here, let me help you with that," but instead understands the importance of failure. Failure keeps us trying. Easy success tends to cause us to give up the first time that we're faced with a job that takes persistence. Now, this is probably why the most popular sports and games are those most difficult to master. This must be why millions of men go back to golf each year, knowing that it's one of the most difficult games to get good at. The same would apply to the universal popularity of tennis, bridge, marriage, politics, and statesmanship. But the purpose in my mentioning these tests with youngsters and white rats, if you can forget the invidious comparison, is that we need to fail if we're to develop persistence. And maybe we shouldn't be so quick to give the kids a hand when they find themselves stumped on a problem. A bright, personable young man had been offered the opportunity to work for a highly successful, well-established manufacturing company. He saw the personnel director, talked with other officers of the company, and finally requested an interview with the company's president and chairman of the board. And this is how the president himself tells the story of what happened. The young man said he was considering an offer to join our company. He wanted to be certain he was making the right lifetime choice, and he felt he had a right to research this question right up to the chairman of the board. He was intelligent, ambitious, and appeared to have good potential for growth. In fact, the company president went on to say, "I caught myself speculating as to whether or not he might run the company in 20 years. However, his line of questioning was disappointing. It suggested that his goal was personal security and not opportunity. He was interested not in our problems and probable growth, but in our rate of employee turnover, in our fringe benefits, and in our pension plan, to a point where it became apparent to me that he wanted to spend his working days in an atmosphere of maximum personal security, and not in a dynamic environment of exploiting our opportunities. I felt I had an obligation to place this matter in focus, and he appeared shocked when I told him that I was sure he could not find security in our company, because I'd been looking for it for some time and couldn't find it myself. I told him that it was frequently necessary for us to make major strategic decisions with respect to product, key personnel, pricing, expansion, and the like, and that despite our excellent staff, our sound product position, and our financial strength, a major error could relegate all of our personal security programs to the ash can. I reminded him, for example, that products can be obsoleted by research and invention, conducted in some remote basement in the world, which would have the effect of rendering unnecessary our plants, facilities, personnel, even management. I also reminded him that this not only could happen, but has happened many times. I told him that there was no absolute security in our company or any other company, except that which our personnel collectively earned from day to day and from year to year, and that furthermore, there was no absolute security for him in our company unless he remained competitive in his work until the day of his retirement. And finally, I suggested that in planning his life work, that he place major emphasis on exploiting opportunities for growth with their attendant successes and failures, rather than on personal security in and of itself. Well, unfortunately, he behaved like the young man reported in the Gospel who asked the Lord what he might do to gain eternal life. When he heard the answer, and considering it too hard, he silently went away. Morbid emphasis on personal security generates a certain myopia, a dedication to the status quo, resistance to change, and the rejection of opportunities for personal growth with their associated risks and rewards because there might be a finite chance to fail. And he closed with this thought: I've learned over the years that preoccupation with security breeds insecurity, and that security, like